today we are writing exponential functions from a table. So we're going to go ahead just to have written down again the regular form for an exponential function. F of x equals a times b to the x. We remember b was our ratio, which is the number that's being multiplied every single time, and then a was our y-intercept. Every time that you work on anything, any sort of worksheets or tests or whatever that have exponential functions, I would highly recommend that you write this whole thing down at the top of your paper before you get started. I'm just going to jump straight into this and do some examples and just show you how this works. So let's get going with example 1. We are going to make what's called a t-table. It's an xy table. We're going to have x values of 0, 1, 2, and 3. And then for our first example, our y values are going to be 2, 6, 18, and 54. Okay, when we are writing an exponential function from a table, all we have to do is identify what the y-intercept is, what the ratio is, and then just follow this order to write it out. So I know that no matter what, my exponential function is going to start with f of x equals. Okay, two things to identify. Y-intercept is always the easiest. It's the first thing that comes after the equal sign. And the y-intercept is represented where the graph crosses the y-axis, and that coordinate is always going to be 0, something. So when x is 0, that's our y-intercept. So in this case, a is going to be 2. So the first thing that comes after the equal sign in my function is 2. Okay, then we're going to put our little multiplication sign. And now we have to figure out what our ratio is, which just means what number are we multiplying by in our table on the y side every single time. So 2 to 6, 6 to 18, 18 to 54. If you're struggling to figure it out, you're just going to take, you could do 18 divided by 6 and see what that is, 6 divided by 2, see what that is, and we should be able to figure out here that each time we're multiplying by 3, so our ratio b is going to be 3. So that comes after 2 times in our function, and then raised to the x power, and that's always going to be the case. So that right there is going to be our final answer. F of x equals 2 times 3 to the x power. There is another way that we can write this, and it's something that we're going to start doing pretty much from here on out. This is what it looks like. F of x equals 2 times 3 to the x, where our common ratio is in parentheses. I find that it's easier to read, it's easier to see, it's easier to type in when we get to our Delta Math units, but just in general, it looks a little bit cleaner, and when fractions come into play, which is something we're about to look at, I think it just looks a little bit better, and it's not as confusing. You're less likely to try to multiply 2 times 3 before raising it to the exponent, because remember, we have to follow our order of operations. Okay. Let's go ahead and do a second example. We're going to create another XY table here. We're going to have the same x values of 0, 1, 2, and 3. And then my y values, my y values this time will be 20, 10, 5, and 2.5. Okay, we're going to start the same way. Everything always starts f of x equals, and then let's go ahead and identify our y-intercept, which is where x is 0 right here at the top. So a is 20. Now we have to identify our common ratio. Now, I can tell to get from 20 to 10 and 10 to 5 and 5 to 2.5 that means I'm dividing by 2. Now, similarly to when we had geometric sequences, when you are dividing, there's no way to write that into our formula to show that it's dividing. So when we write it, instead of writing dividing by 2, we're going to write that as multiplying by a fraction. So the fraction is 1 over 2, right? Because dividing something in half, or dividing it by 2, is the same as multiplying it by 1/2. So I just want you to make yourself a note here. So dividing means that your ratio is a fraction. So my ratio, again, is 1 over 2. And when I put that all together, it's going to be 20, parentheses 1 over 2, raised to the x. And that's it. So dividing means the ratio is a fraction. Otherwise, everything goes in exactly how you normally would write it, and that's it. That is all you need to know about writing exponential functions from a table.